Here. I'd like to call up to the front here Mr. Dave Polito as the Algernon Local School Superstar Employee of the Month. Read a couple of very nice things that his nominators had to say about him. Dave has a deep knowledge of the structures of ACS and possesses the ability to problem solve difficult repair situations. He consistently works to find cost-effective ways to maintain and repair district equipment, and his work ethic reflects that he cares deeply about providing safe and efficient facilities for ACS staff and students. Congratulations. I'd also like to call up for a moment Mrs. Hanners, please, if you come on up to the front here. As we stated several times in weekly memos to the community, also put out in the newsletters as well too, we are very, very proud to announce once again that Algonac Elementary is a reward school according to the Michigan Department of Education for 2013. And so her banners come in and we'd like to officially present it to her tonight and say congratulations to her students, to her staff, colleagues, teachers. Ms. Rawlings, would you come on up here, please? And the same story as well too for Mrs. Rawlings. We'd like to say one more congratulations to her staff, to her students, to her parents. Thank you so very much for all the hard work that you did, and congratulations on your NDE designation as a researcher.
Next is our presentation of the audit. Gentlemen? Frank Moran.
Good evening, thank you very much. I just want to make a few comments. I'm Mark Fleischer from Plant Events. This is Vince Benino. I'm the partner on the engagement, so I have a responsibility for really the daily operations and actually signing the financial statements to be true and accurate at this point. And Vince Benino is our manager on the job. Runs the day-to-day operations, providing various staff that are here for about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. So first I want to thank the board for having us here tonight, but also thank Brian and Lori and their department. It's no small task to get ready for the audit. We're out here a little bit in June and July for some interim procedures, then we've been for about a week and a half, 2 weeks also for the year-end procedures. So they have a lot of things besides the daily operations of the district from the financial standpoint, but also get ready for us. And we know it's no small inconvenience when we show up. To kind of get onto the presentation, one comment I wanted to make first, two reports in front of you here. Basic financial statements, which has an unqualified opinion, and in order to speak, I guess that's the best opinion you can get. The clean opinion, no issues with the opinion, so that's one thing that we signed from a firm standpoint, that we are letting you know through our auditor's report that you have unqualified, very clean opinion, no compliance issues. There's another financial statement also called your federal rewards or your A-133 financial statement. We also have to do an audit on all the federal program money that you get throughout the year. Again, that is an unqualified opinion, and also has a no compliance issue, no issues, non-compliance, we look at no controls, et cetera. So,
Excuse me, could you use the microphone, please?
oh, sure.
Thank you.
It won't work with the actual display
Oh.
being on.
So I was trying to speak up a little bit. So again,
Yeah.
from the federal program standpoint, you also have an unqualified opinion, no non-compliance issues. So again, we look at internal controls, we look at the programs, we've audited those, and I can offer you again a clean opinion, the best opinion that you can get. So from that standpoint, we've got a short draft presentation that focuses on the general fund of the financial statements. Basically, that the main operating account that really operates the entire school district from that standpoint. So we focus on that because that's where really all the revenues and expenditures are captured for running the district. There's other funds, such as your bond funds, et cetera, but really all have a direct relationship to the actual running the day-to-day operations of the district. So again, we've got a few slides. We'll kick off with that, and we'll focus again on the
Mark mentioned these slides primarily represent the general fund, the primary operating fund of the district. So the first slide we look at is a comparison of our general fund revenues and the different primary categories where our revenues fall. We're looking at our 2013 actual, our 2013 final budget, as well as our 2012 actual. So for the year, we ended about $16.5 million total general fund revenue, and it's in three primary categories. The first, the red box, would be our federal revenues. So the majority of that's our Title I, as well as our IDEA revenues and grants that we received through the year. The second, the privileged box, would be our local revenues. And that would be primarily our property taxes, the non-homestead component that the district would receive. The fourth, our state aid revenue that we received through the year. There was a slight increase, so we ended about 10.6 million compared to a little less than 10.5 last year. But that was because of a one-time payment related to MIPSR's funding for the state. And then the last category, the smallest, would just be the other kind of components of revenues that the district would receive through the general fund.
And one comment I want to make here that will be a theme through some of the next slides that we have is that in 2011 and 2012, we had some ERA funding that was actually in 2011 and 2012. There was no ERA funding in 2013. We'll go on and explain that a little bit. So I can't remember what ERA stands for. It's the American Recovery Act. Reinvestment Act. Thank you.
Next slide, again, still focused on the general fund, but now on the expenditure side as well as the different buckets that make up our general fund expenditures. So again, we're looking at our 2013 actual, our 2013 final budget, and then also our 2012 actual. For the year, total expenditures were up a little over $1 million, and divided into our three different categories. The first being our blue, our instruction category. That was up the majority, about $769,000. That's primarily related to some increases related to teacher salaries for legislation purposes, so additional full-time employees, as well as the added costs and benefits that would go along with that. In addition, it would be the increases related to pension contributions and overall benefits such as healthcare and other benefits. The supporting services line, the box in red, for the most part, that was relatively consistent between 2012 as well as 2013. And then the community services, the green box, there was a slight increase, about $303,000 from last year. That was primarily related to the latchkey fund now being reported effective July 1 within the general fund. So that would have been the latchkey fund's primary expenditures for the year. The fourth slide here, we take a look at our general fund expenditures, kind of in a pie chart by category. If we were to overlay last year's numbers, the percentages would be very similar. Instruction would be roughly the 60% as of this year. Support services would have went down from 38 to 37, and then community services and transfers net is about a 3% total expenditures. Within our instruction, that's our direct expenses, so those would be primarily direct classroom related expenditures. Support services, that'd be primarily a lot of items outside the classroom that operate to help operate and support the district, support the classroom activities. And then the community services and transfers and that. So part of that would be the energy bond payments that are made from the general fund and transferred out to the debt service funds, as well as part of that community services part would be some of the child care and latchkey expenses. Historically, that would been reported in its own separate fund.
Would that be a typical pie chart for other districts? It would be, and another way I like to try to think about this too, instead of percentages, is almost like a dollar bill. So 60 cents of every dollar that's really going through the district is really direct interaction in the classroom, and the rest of that support services. That kind of gives you, I think, sometimes a little better picture if you think about dollars and cents. But it would be very typical for other districts.
On the fifth slide here, we look at a trend of our pure pupil revenue expenditures, or revenue and expenditures by pupil. This is a 5-year trend with the 2014 projected budget numbers. Through 2011 and a half, we were pretty much break even our revenue and expenditures. As we can see in 12, our expenditure lines start to increase above our revenue a little bit. And then 13, the year under audit, that's where we have that gap, which represented about $1.2 million of expenditures greater than our general fund revenue. This very well ties into a lot of what Mark mentioned, those ARA funds that we no longer receive. 2011, they're roughly about $640,000 for the district. 2012, about $400,000. And fast forward to 13, there was no ARA expense or no ARA revenue received during the year. And then the projected numbers, the gap, again, going into 14 based on current budget, that represents about a $1.4 million deficit going into 14.
So really back in 2011, we really started talking about the cliff that we were gonna run into. So the ARA funding was really a Band-Aid kind of at that point in time to give you additional, federal funding to actually meet some of those expenditure obligations. And really, we run into really this fiscal cliff. If you really think about it, over 2011 and 2012, we had well over $1 million of ARA funding that was spigots off. So we have now entered into that cliff that we've talked about that we really going to run into at that ARA funding stop. So think about that 2-year period of time, a little over $1 million, and that really is your actual your expenditure to revenue gap. This year was about $1.2 million. So it's finally come to fruition. Not good fruition, but.
The sixth slide here, we take a look at our total general fund and what makes up our general fund balance, about $2.7 million at the end of the year. So obviously, we can see the majority of that red pie shape, that would be our assigned fund balance. Totals go roughly about $2.5 million. The majority of this, so this would be presented in the financial statement footnotes, about note 10, but the majority relates to bond payments that we know we're gonna have to make. Technology upgrades that we'll have to make in the future, as well as enrollment reductions. And then there's several other categories that make up, but those would be our 3 primary drivers of that $2.5 million. The blue box are non-spendable. So we have inventory and prepaid. So those are the items that that are not cash on hand. We can't physically spend it. It's our inventory balance at year end, as well as prepaids at June 30th. The box in green would be our committed fund balance. And that would represent balances that the board has committed previously. And this is $50,000 related to child care. And then the remaining kind of the unassigned would be about $136,000. So those would be dollars at the moment that do not have a specified purpose. It's kind of our rainy day general dollars within our fund balance.
Slide number 7 here, we have a 10-year history of the fund balance for the district. And I want to make a couple comments on this that I think are a little bit telling in the picture. So we look at 2008 through really 2011 and maybe 2012. If you look at the overall fund balance, it primarily remained relatively constant within a few $100,000. And then again, coming out of 11 and coming out of 12, not having the accumulated $1.2 million of ARA funding, we had that cliff again. So not only did we have the revenue cliff, it really kind of it really extrapolated into your fund balance cliff. So you had a deficit this year of spending. So you had expenditures greater than revenues, and that showed up in your fund balance also. And then if you look to the projected 2014, that will also remain to be the fact. You'll have again a decrease or a decline in the fund balance. So again, we don't have any new. We being the district doesn't have any new revenue sources, and then faced with some declining enrollment and so forth. So your fund balance at this point is projected to go down again in 2014. And a couple things to highlight too, which Vince just talked about regarding some of those sources of fund balance that are assigned. You can see that the unassigned portion from 2004 has steadily decreased as our fund balance started to decrease. And now if you look at 2014, we really don't have any unassigned or call it free fund balance that isn't assigned to the bond payments, projected enrollment declines, technology, etc. So we have basically are getting to the point where, as you can see in 2013 and 2014, that we've identified sources of that fund balance, and we don't have any cushion left against that unassigned fund balance.
So with that, looking even further to 2015, that 2014 balance represents about